Engine man can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What's up, guys? This is Mickey Farrell coming to you from the TFT headquarters based here in New York City, bringing you a view from the top floor. We're discussing current topics, tactics, and dilemmas plaguing the American fire service with a no-fluff, all-business attitude. We push the limits on hot-button issues, as well as shed some light on trending issues that many choose to shy away from. So what's going on, guys? Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the flow state formula. We're understanding that every fire we go to has a different cadence, a different tempo, and a different rhythm. Now, let's start with the cadence. The cadence, this is more of a march, the engine company, the infantry of the fire service, always progressively moving forward. That's the cadence of a fire. Now, when talking cadence, that kind of aligns yourself with company integrity. We have to remember that company integrity is everything when it comes to the engine company. And if we lose company integrity, we lose everything. We lose company integrity in the engine, we lose the cadence, and ultimately we lose water on the fire. This is when people die. This is when firefighters die. The cadence of a fire really doesn't really change much throughout the incident versus the tempo. Now, the tempo of the fire, this is where the truck company kind of dances their way into position. It's more of a ballroom dance, a creative outlook of the fireground. Now, the tempo, there's margin for error. And that said, though, not major errors, but we can do things finding or aligning ourselves with a tempo that no one even knows about. As simple as taking a bathroom mirror versus a window. It happens to the best of us, and it's something that no one even speaks of. We just kind of follow it, chuckle to ourselves, and say, you know, that was rather funny, and I won't do it again. Next fire you go to, it may happen. It's one of those things. That doesn't affect the tempo of the fire. Like I said, margin for error. With cadence, when we lose company integrity, the dominoes begin to fall the wrong way. And sometimes harnessing those dominoes as they begin to fall is very, very hard to do. But when we put these two together, cadence versus tempo, then march versus the dance, the engine versus the truck, we ultimately find the rhythm. And when we can align ourselves with that rhythm, we find the flow state formula. This is what separates the great firefighters from the average firefighters, the great fire departments from the departments that are trying really, really hard but can't seem to get it. Not a paycheck, not career versus volunteer. It's understanding where you fit in this formula. Now, a tool we can use to dial this in and to understand where we ultimately fit in is the OODA loop. This is something that I'm pretty sure most of us are familiar with. For those of you that are not familiar with the OODA loop, it comes from Air Force Colonel John Boyd, where he applied the concept of combat operations. His approach explains how agility can overcome raw power in dealing with human opponents. But this is where it differs on the fireground. We're not dealing with human opponents. We're dealing with a fire building and a fire rapidly spreading. So that tempo can change dramatically throughout the fire. This comes from understanding somewhat of building construction, not so much how buildings are built or how they collapse when they're burning. It's how fires burn within certain buildings versus a project building or a fireproof building. That tempo and that cadence is a little bit slower to dial in the rhythm. Now put that in a wood frame or a private dwelling, that tempo is very fast. The cadence is moving very quickly, and that rhythm is in line, but we have to understand we're not thinking 1, 2, 3 steps. We're thinking 5, 6, 10 steps ahead, because that's how quickly these buildings progress fire. So understanding within the OODA loop, when he was asked to come up with this theory, the Colonel John Boyd said, well, there's 4 elements that I can align myself with understanding how we attack the enemy. The first thing is I'm observing what I'm doing. Then I'm orientating myself. Then I'm deciding. And then I'm acting. So when we observe, that's our size up. That's our initial eyes on the building. The ticket comes in, the alarm. That's all this lines into the observation of what we're going to do. Now, we get to the box, we get to the fire, we size it up on arrival. Right? So now we're orientating ourselves with what we observed prior to getting there. That initial observation, now we're orientating ourselves. Then we're going to decide what we're going to do. Engine versus truck. What size line are we stretching? How are we getting to the rear? How are we getting to the roof? How are we forcing the door? And then we're acting upon our mission. These are great things, but again, human opponent. When we're talking the fire ground, I added 2 more. Pause and breathe. Everything we do on the fire ground, we should be taking a pause and a breath. A tactical breath can allow you to align yourself to think clearly. Because when we add a little bit of stress to what we're doing, our mind gets kind of fuzzy. You know, I talk often about instinctual notion and trusting your gut. But your gut's only 99% right. Sometimes that 1% can throw you off. And by taking that quick tactical pause before you act upon your mission, maybe it can allow you to realign yourself in the moment. So that's the OODA loop concept with my 2 additions to pause and breathe. I think that's something that we really have to understand when we're trying to find that flow state formula, and understand that the flow state formula changes dramatically throughout the incident. Something else that I want to leave you with before we move on. Rational thought lags behind emotional reaction. Just let that sink in for a moment. Rational thought lags behind emotional reaction. So that lag of emotional reaction versus rational thought can be made up with that quick pause, breath, observe, orientate, decide, then act. But understanding that we have to take that breath could realign that emotional reaction. Now, this emotional reaction in this tactical breath is not only used when we pull up on arrival to dial in with that flow state formula. Every time you reset a task, right? So you size up how you're going to do something, right? So you look at the door. You walk up to it, take a quick breath, observe, orientate, decide, then act. How are you going to force that door? That quick breath can allow you to see that door a little bit differently. I said in my last episode that the retina is part of the brain, right? And we learn to see things differently. So this is something that I often would say that you can't teach it in a classroom, that it's developed over time, and I truly believe that. But I do believe we can teach ourselves to see things differently. We can learn things differently by slowing down, observing the details. This is what will allow you to align yourself with the flow state formula of an incident. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. Flow state formula, it changes throughout the incident. Dialing yourself in, very, very important to success on the fire ground. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next time. This is Mickey Farrell. Thanks for tuning in.